Hello class, welcome to another section of our discussion that is definite on the different types of assessment. In education, the term assessment refers to the wide variety of methods or tools that educators use to evaluate, measure, and document the academic readiness, learning progress, skill acquisition, or educational needs of students. Assessments are used for a wide variety of purposes in schools and in educational system. So for now, we will be discussing these types of assessment. So we have this high-stakes assessment. So these high-stakes assessment are typically the standardized tests used for the purposes of accountability. Any attempt given by a federal, a state, or the local government, for example. Uh, in case of the Philippines, we have the national government, the provincial, and even the local government agencies to ensure that students are enrolled in effective schools and are being taught by effective teachers. So in general, high stakes means that important decisions about students, teachers, schools, or districts are based on the scores students achieve on the high stakes test. So what is this high stakes test? So if there is a high stakes test, then we have low stakes test. So in a low stakes test, it will be used to measure academic achievement, identify learning problems, or inform instructional adjustments among other purposes. What distinguishes a high-stakes test from a low-stakes test is not its form. When we say form, it is how the test is designed. But high-stakes test is differentiated with low-stakes test because of its function. So function here means how the results are used. For example, if test results are used to determine an important outcome, such as whether a student receives a high school diploma, the test will be considered a high-stakes test regardless of whether it's a multiple choice, an oral exam, an essay, or other types of tests. And for the low-stakes tests, generally carry no significant or public consequences. The results of the low-stakes test is typically a matter far more to an individual teacher or student than anyone else. And scores are not used to varnish or tarnish the reputation of teachers and schools. So usually, when we have the low-stakes tests, these are the typical tests that we encounter in our classroom. But when we say high-stakes test, we are referring to the examination that will define what will happen to you after taking the test. Example, if uh, you have the pre-board exam. So, example, the engineering students have the pre-board exam. So, for them to graduate, they need to pass the pre-board exam. Okay. So that is high stakes assessment and how it is being differentiated with low stakes assessment. Next is diagnostic assessment. When we talk about diagnostic assessment, we are referring to the assessment that examines what the students know and can do prior to a learning program being implemented. So diagnostic assessment assists teachers to gain the following: understanding of current situation, the knowledge about how to improve, and the required resources in your instruction. And uh, you will be assisted by the diagnostic assessment to do all of these three before you will take your instruction or the action in this figure. Then after the main goal of that is for you to improve the learning performance or outcomes of your students. In diagnostic assessment, it can help you identify your students' current knowledge of a subject, their skill sets and capabilities, and to clarify misconceptions before teaching takes place. It will also help you to know students' strengths and weaknesses, and can help you better plan what to teach and how to teach it. Previously in our discussion, I have emphasized diagnostic assessment as part of the assessment for learning. And here, it really shows that diagnostic assessment really look into the strengths and weaknesses of students for us to better plan, for us to have this specific target and strategies for students to learn better. So the types of diagnostic assessment are, uh, it can be a pretest on the content and abilities of the student. It can be a self-assessment, identifying the skills and competencies of the students. Self-assessment in this case becomes diagnostic because the students will tell you how he or she is assessing himself, and you will use the result of the assessment as your basis to diagnose what will be your instruction, what will be the type of your instruction. So discussion board responses are also type of diagnostic assessment. So interview, an example, a brief interview of 10 minute interview of each student can be a diagnostic assessment. Then we have placement. When we say placement, it is the type of assessment that determine your current level of skills and knowledge in reading, writing, and math, for example. This information determines the most appropriate courses for your enrollment or placement. Placement assessments are used to place students into a course level, or academic program. For example, an assessment may be used to determine whether a student is ready for Algebra 1 or a higher level of algebra or high level of mathematics course, such as an honors level course, for example. For this reason, placement assessment are administered before a course or program begins, and the basic intent is to match students with appropriate learning experiences that address their distinct learning needs. Previously, the national government is giving a national career examination for students, for them to know if what would be the appropriate uh, program that they will take once they will enter the college. So the result of that national career assessment uh, will be given as part of the requirements to the admission. Then we have this formative assessment. When we say formative assessment, this is a kind of evaluation that is done during the implementation of a program or a curriculum. So this is done during the instruction. No? It provides a feedback for improvement of instruction, or the improvement of the instruction. Sorry for the typographical error. Then usually we do formative assessment for us to know what is the status of our students in our current instruction, if they are learning what you have discussed or not. So previously in the lesson of assessment for learning, I have emphasized that formative assessment, what is meant by formative assessment. So it uses formative tests, which may consist of 5 to 10 items. Konti lang. It's short test for you to know if they are getting the important concepts. It is administered at the end of the instruction, but not the end of the unit. Ibig sabihin dito, nakapagturo ka na, So, tinitignan mo ngayon kung yung tinuro mo ay may natutuhan ang inyong mga estudyante. So, please don't be confused with the term end of the instruction here. Baka you might find it confusing with the summative assessment. Ang gusto lang sabihin ng formative assessment na administer at the end of instruction. So, ginagawa mo yung formative kasi may itinuro ka na, may diniscuss ka na, then chine-check mo ngayon kung ano na yung natutuhan nila sa iyong tinuturo. Okay? The result is not recorded or graded. So, it is not actually recorded or graded, but it only provides a feedback to the quality of teacher's instruction. So, pwede naman siyang maging recorded, but not graded. No? Minsan, we need to record students' formative result for us to have, for monitoring purposes. However, it's not necessarily na kailangan siyang i-record and hindi rin siya sinasama sa grading. Basta ang purpose lang ni formative is for us to know kung nakakasunod ba yung mga estudyante. So there are different types of formative assessment. Observations during in-class activities, or students' non-verbal feedback during lecture, homework exercises as review for exams and class discussions, reflection journals that are viewed periodically during the semester, question and answer sessions, both formal, planned, and informal, or it's a spontaneous question and answer. So, ito yung mga examples ng formative assessment. Okay. Okay, you can also have formative assessment by doing this, conferences between the instructor and student at various points of the semester. Ibig sabihin, magkakaroon kayo ng discussion with the instructor para makita ninyo kung ano na yung development ng estudyante, yung learning niya, no, during the semester. So you can have in-class activities where students informally present their results. So, pwede rin yung mga ginagawa nating tinataas nyo yung mga letters, A, B, C, D. Yan, pwede yan, mga in-class activities. No? Students' feedback collected by periodically answering specific questions about the instruction, and your self-evaluation of performance and progress. Here are the types of formative assessment. Okay, so there are 3 options a teacher has to choose. Una, paano magagamitin ng formative assessment? Pwedeng you proceed to the next objective, pwedeng i-reteach mo siya, or i-remediate. Okay? So, kailan natin gagawin ito? We will proceed to the next lesson if the class attained 75% or above mastery. So, ito yung sinasabi ko last time when nakita mo most of your students pass the test, 75% and up, then you can proceed to the next lesson. So, however, if the class achieved less than 50% mastery, then you better reteach. And remediate if the class attained 50% to 74% mastery. So, ano ba tong remediate? When you say remediate, hindi mo kailangang ulitin lahat. Ang i-discuss mo lang ay yung kung ano ang importante or kung ano yung hindi nila nakuha dun sa test. So, yun lang yung remediation. Baka kasi hindi nila nakuha yung portion ng test na yun kasi nagkaroon sila ng misconception. So, yun yung mga nire-remedy natin. So, yun. That is what we can choose, no, based on the result of your test, formative test. Then, let's proceed to the summative test. So, summative test is conducted after the completion of a unit or a program. It provides overall judgment of a program or a unit and determines accountability for success or failure. So, here are the things that we should remember about summative assessment. Ginagawa siya after the completion of a unit or a program. So, pagkatapos ng isang unit, ng isang chapter, ng isang semester, ng isang buong program, for example, bago kayo mag-graduate ng education. So, yan yung kabuuan naman yun. Summative din. So, parang achievement test ang tawag natin dito. So, it provides an overall judgment nga sa buong program ninyo or yung unit lang. So, then, it will help you determine your success or failure. It is conducted after the completion of a unit or a program. Yan. So, I think naulit lang itong slide na to. So, summative assessment assess the student's achievement at the end of the unit, a quarter, semester, or an academic year. Grades are assigned. So, nire-record ang grades ninyo dito, yung mga scores ninyo dito, sila yung kino-compute and provide feedback to students' performance. Okay, so what are the types of summative assessment? So, it involves examinations, major, high-stakes exam. Kasama yan sa summative assessment. No? Sabi nga natin kanina, sa high-stakes assessment or examination, ito yung mga nagbibigay o ginagamit as a basis for a major decision in your career, for example, or in your educational journey. So, papasa ka ba or hindi? Let's say, are you qualified for a license, for example? Mga high-stakes assessment ang mga yan. So, summative sila. Okay? Final examination naman sa ating mga classroom assessment, no? It is truly a summative assessment. Term papers are considered also summative papers, summative assessment, since it provides you what you have learned, no, in the semester or yung major output ang mga to. Projects can also be summative assessment kasi projects will somehow reflect your learning, no, doon sa isang concept and skills. So, another type of summative assessment ay yung mga portfolios, mga performances, and even student evaluation of the course. And instructor self-evaluation, summative assessment ang mga yan. Okay. So, let's have for specific description between formative and summative in their relationship. In terms of purpose, ang purpose ng formative assessment is to improve the instruction process, while the purpose of summative is to assess the learning outcomes in a particular period, no? Kung high school man yan or basic education, ito yung mga tinatawag nating long test, chapter test, what do you call that? Periodical test, yan. Sa atin naman in college, we have the midterm examination, final examination, yan. Then, another is, when is these two conducted? Formative is done during instruction or ongoing operation, while summative assessment is done after a completion of a syllabus or a unit. However, yung summative assessment, minsan, since part pa rin siya ng buong semester, let's say for example, yung chapter, minsan you can consider it as a formative kung gusto mo siyang kung magiging basis mo siya for you to improve your next topic. Audience, teachers, ang ating formative. While summative, marami ang interesado dito. Ito yung lahat ng who cares about assessment. Pwede yan. Sila yung pwede mong maging audience. Okay. Typical method ng formative, pwede yung observation, pwedeng paper and pencil na formative test, pwedeng monitoring, checklist, yan. While summative, pwede rin checklist, rating scales, summative test, portfolio. Yung checklist, example, ginagamit to kapag nag-o-observe kami ng mga pa-practice teaching, kapag na-deploy na kayo sa inyong practice teaching, minsan we have this checklist, no? Ito yung hawak namin, tapos titignan namin kung yung mga nandoon nagagawa na ninyo while you are teaching. Na-observe nyo ba yung tamang classroom management? Tama ba yung paggawa ninyo ng lesson plan? Tama ba yung assessment procedure ninyo? Maganda ba yung mga instructional materials ninyo? Yan, tinitignan. May checklist tayo dyan. And it is a summative kasi ano mo na yan eh, final demo mo na yon, no? So, yun. I just gave that as an example kung paano nagagamit yung mga checklist as summative assessment. Then, when do we report it? So, ang sa formative, periodic, and it's often informal. Parang last time, informal yung pagkakasabi ko regarding dun sa result ng mga tanong natin kung nasasagot ninyo or hindi. Informal yon. While yung summative, formal kasi kailangan mo ng record, cumulative record and assessment of what was learned and accomplished. Ito na yung mga sinusulat natin sa card, sa ating class record. No? So, yun yung relationship and between formative and summative assessment. So, we have discussed those different types of assessment, particularly high-stakes assessment, placement, diagnostic, formative, and summative. So for this section, that will be all. I'll be seeing you on the next video, which is about the principles of high-quality assessment.